What happens when you take Peterbot, one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen in the history of Fortnite, and combine him with Pollo, an underrated kid from the NA West region who had just started making a name for himself? Well, you get the 2024 FNCS Global Champions, but not many remember this almost never happened. So let's go all the way back to the beginning of their careers to see how they got here, first starting with Peterbot. Everyone knows him now as one of the most mechanical keyboard and mouse players we've ever seen. However, he originally started his journey as a controller player on console. He would jump headfirst into competitive after just playing casually for a few years. However, like most, starting out he wasn't very good. Throughout Season X and Chapter 2 Season 1, he played in almost every single tournament, not seeing much luck, until he got his break by earning a little bit in the console Winter Royale. Now typically, once a player gets their first earnings, there's some sort of spark that goes off which makes them start placing a lot more consistently. But this didn't really happen with Peterbot. It wouldn't be too long after this where he would buy a PC, but he would decide to continuously jump between that and console throughout the next few FNCSs, since back then each device had their own. Eventually, well over 6 months after the Winter Royale, he would start placing in a few cups on both console and PC. But after Chapter 2 Season 4's FNCS, he would finally make the switch to PC, and there was a massive reason for this. I mentioned how he kept jumping back and forth between platforms, and a big reason for this was because of the fact that he really enjoyed playing on mouse and keyboard since he was seeing a lot more improvement in his gameplay faster than ever. Another major factor of this is very simple, but he just straight up couldn't find a good sensitivity that he liked on controller. So going into Season 5, he decided to make the full switch to mouse and keyboard and officially stick to PC. But little did he know, this decision would end up changing his life forever. First, he made it to a DreamHack Finals for the first time, then during Trio FNCS placed extremely well throughout the qualifiers, making it to his first ever semifinals. Now he wouldn't make grands, however something obviously clicked for him. In just a few months, he went from barely being able to place within the top 1000 consistently to frequently earning in cash cups. The same story would be told throughout Season 6, with him placing very well but not being able to bring it home during the FNCS semifinals. But his luck was about to change in Season 7, where he would really put his name on the map. For the first time in a few years, this season had a solo FNCS called the All-Star Showdown. The catch was 90 of the players participating had qualified based off of how good they did in the previous 2 grands, meaning there were only 10 spots open for those who haven't yet qualified. And of course, Peterbot was one of these players considering he had never made an FNCS finals. The qualifiers had 4 rounds, and during the first 3 he qualified with flying colors. However, now was the hardest one, a set lobby final where only the top 10 made it into the grands. And off the back of a 6-kill win in Game 4, Peterbot would just barely squeeze his way in by only 2 points, making his first ever FNCS Grand Finals. Now, a player participating in their first grands, really anything within the middle of the pack would be considered a good performance. However, Pete had other plans. Somehow, he was able to secure himself a nice little drop on the map, which had just enough loot for him. And well, in the end, he didn't let the pressure get to him, finishing in 8th place overall. Looking around him on the leaderboard, there were so many huge names that everyone knew, then just some random kid who had just 5x'd his earnings from his first ever Grand Finals. After this, many players started to wonder who this random kid was, and it wouldn't take long for him to get picked up by P-God and TK for that season's Trio FNCS. Now in the end, they'd place 11th because they were contested. However, this season he really showed how good he was after winning multiple of the FNCS qualifier rounds, but most importantly showing off his solo skills by winning 2 cash cups. Since he was playing with P-God, who was already an established streamer in the scene, he would end up pushing Peter to finally start streaming himself and post videos on YouTube. Because of this, he would gain tens of thousands of followers over the next few months, and finally everybody was starting to see how talented he really was. Of course though, this is where those cheating allegations would really begin, since nobody could believe how good he truly was at fighting. But we'll get into all that down the road. Now that we covered how he started to get known in the scene, let's go a bit quicker through the rest since you probably know his story already. With only 2 more seasons to go in Chapter 2, there were actually 2 FNCSs left. And for them, he decided to change trios, now playing with Macwood and Bucky. At first they did mediocre again, finishing in 11th, but in the Grand Royale they get a very impressive 4th place. Now though, we were going into Chapter 3, and with that a complete switch in the main game mode to now be duos. Things started out promising, with Peter placing in a bunch of cash cups, however he wasn't able to lock in a solid teammate until right before FNCS. However, he was still able to place 10th, which isn't all that bad. But in Season 2, he would end up getting his big break. At this point, everyone already knew Peterbot as an insane fragger and not so much of an IGL. So many were shocked when just a week before FNCS started, he picked up Byla, a controller player who was also known as a god fighter. Nobody really knew how this duo would stack up against the rest of NA East's best players, but right before Grands, they would get blessed. A new POI called the Collider was added, and it had by far the best loot on the map. Though since most of the best teams already had a drop claimed, they were somehow able to get half of the drop uncontested, and they would make sure to seize this opportunity, in the end coming in out of nowhere winning their first ever FNCS Grand Finals. Many were in shock. Everyone knew Peter was good, but still nobody expected this win. So now that they were NA's best duo, viewers were excited to see how they would follow it up. However, Season 3 wasn't anything too crazy, ending in 6th place. However, many expected them to win after being in 1st during day 1, but they had a really bad second day, which was the reason for them dropping down so much. Now, I briefly mentioned how Peter was getting a lot of cheating accusations, and after winning this, it only increased. However, for the first time since the World Cup, Epic Games was hosting a LAN event, which was the FNCS Invitationals. There was a bit of a problem though. Byla wasn't able to go, so instead he picked up Jamper. This was a really solid pick though, and many thought they'd place highly, but in the end they'd get 37th, much worse than anyone expected. This now brought us to Chapter 4, where things would start to continue downhill. Season 1, he would end up playing with Bugha, who had just come off of an insane Chapter 3, placing 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. However, their performance was very disappointing, ending in 16th. The rest of that year wouldn't go so well either, with him ending at 9th and 16th again during Grands. This meant he hadn't even qualified for the 2023 FNCS Global Championship yet. Now, he would end up making it after winning the Last Chance Major, but in the finals, he would see another poor performance at LAN, with him finishing in 26th. At this point, it was hard to say Peterbot wasn't washed. Yes, he was still an insane fighter with crazy mechanics, but just didn't have the placements anymore to back up how good he was. But as you all know, everything would change in Chapter 5 when he would decide to give an up-and-coming player named Pollo a shot. So now that we're caught up to when they started to duo, let's take a look to see exactly how Pollo got here. Now, Pollo is an interesting case because he's overall a very quiet person who doesn't share much of anything online, let alone his personal life. We do know, however, he started competing very early on, right when online tournaments began, like the Scallywag Cup and of course the World Cup. But Pollo wouldn't do so hot in any of them. In fact, it wouldn't be until over 1 year into his competitive career where he would finally make some money in the Chapter 2 Season 3 solo FNCS qualifiers. This season would continue to be a very important one for him, considering he would go on to continue dominating the qualifiers, making it to his first ever Grand Finals where he'd place 53rd, which isn't bad at all considering it was his first time. However, it would be a while before he would start to see success like this again. Since he was playing on NA West, it was a lot harder for just your average comp player to make money since the prize pool was a lot smaller, meaning you had to place a lot higher. So with that being said, throughout the rest of Chapter 2, he would only have a few placements here and there where he would actually make some money. And as far as FNCS goes, he had a few good runs, but wasn't quite able to make it to the Grand Finals again. At least until the Grand Royale, which was the final FNCS of the chapter, where he would get 30th. Again, not the craziest placement, however, he was finally able to stop that dry patch, which is very important. And after breaking the curse, throughout Chapter 3, he would continue to play a lot more consistently, making every single one of the Grand Finals. Now, he wouldn't end up placing super highly in them, with his best being a 15th in Season 3. However, he was starting to finally get his name out there. Most importantly, the fact that he was a very good fighter. During the solo cash cups, he would consistently drop 40 to 60 kills each tourney, which is very impressive when you look at the average for a player who qualified, which was around 25. Now, even though we briefly covered Chapter 3, like I said, this was a big turning point in his career, but nobody was really ready for what he had in store for Chapter 4. For the first time in Fortnite, solo victory cups would happen, and Pollo would start placing consistently in almost every single one. Because of these performances, when FNCS came around, he got the opportunity to play with Defiable. Now, a lot of you probably don't know who this is, however, he was a very good pro player on NA West who had been placing well over the last couple years with around $30,000 earned. You should also keep in mind that Pollo had just above $7,000 earned at the time, so So this was a big moment for him to truly show off how much potential he had. And well, he wouldn't disappoint. They'd go on to play extremely well in Grands, placing second overall, just 4 points away from winning the entire thing. With an already amazing start to the chapter, everything was about to get even crazier heading into Season 2. This was when Epic Games announced NA East and NA West were going to officially merge to create NA Central. So now for your average West player, this meant a lot more competition. However, this worked in Pollo's favor. Since he had now really proved himself with that second place, there were a couple of really good NA East players looking over at West to see who they could pick up. But not a single person was ready to hear who he was going to play with. And well, this player was the one and only Bugha. Like I said, nobody expected this, and everyone started to question why such a decorated player would give some West kid who finally just had a good placement a shot. However, those whispers must have gotten to Bugha because this duo wouldn't last too long, since after only a few tournaments together, Bugha would decide to instead play with threats. Now this sucked for Pollo, however it helped get more eyes on him. In the end though, when FNCS came around, he'd end up playing with another very underrated up-and-coming player, this time from NA East, Sphinx. And when I say nobody expected this duo to do as good as they did, I mean it. That season they'd end up getting third, then in Season 3 a fifth. With these two incredible placements, they had just secured their spot at the 2023 FNCS Global Championship. However, there was a bit of drama along the way. If you remember, back in Season 2, Acorn and Cold would actually try to split after winning the season prior, and I believe this is correct, sorry it's been a while, but Cold actually wanted to play with Pollo for Season 3, however since both duos had already made globals, Sphinx did not want to split up. So he was essentially holding Pollo hostage. But to make a long story short, this was all for nothing since Cold and Acorn missed the deadline to let Epic Games know that they were splitting. Which means overall, this entire thing was for nothing. However, the main reason I mention this is because, as expected, the vibes of this duo were a bit off when globals eventually came around. However, they were still a very good team and everyone was excited to see how they do at LAN. And well, it was very impressive. Now their placement in the end was 16th, which doesn't sound the best, but it definitely is considering the caliber of this lobby and the fact that they were able to win a game in the finals and another one during the upper bracket round. Overall, 2023 was an amazing year for Pollo, going from around $6,000 earned at the beginning of the year to now having close to $100,000. But of course, he is only just getting started. We were now in the OG season of Fortnite and Chapter 5 was right around the corner, so that meant many players were looking for a new teammate. Over the course of that year, Peterbot and Pollo had actually been working with the same coach. Because of this, Peter was able to look at a lot of Pollo's games and realized he was extremely good, and in his words, carried Sphinx in the last chapter. So one day, he would hit up Pollo asking if he wanted to play. Pollo was very shocked to see this DM since he had actually been looking up to Peter over the years trying to become just like him. So obviously, he accepted this offer to duo. And from then on, it was history. At this point, everyone and their grandma knows how dominant of a run they had in Chapter 5, so without getting into any crazy detail, let's go over their achievements thus far. In Season 1, they'd place second, in Season 2, they'd go on to have the perfect season, winning every duo cash cup, Peterbot breaking the kill record during the Solo Victory Cup finals, getting over 40, and last but not least, dominating FNCS, breaking the point record, being the first duo in the entire world to get over 1,000, of course with the help of the Grim Gate coin. Then finally, in Season 3, who would have guessed they'd continue to terrorize NA by winning FNCS once again. At this point in Fortnite, we have never seen a team be this consistent in literally the entire history of the game. But there was just one more event they needed to win to truly crown themselves as the best duo in the world, the FNCS Global Championship. For Peterbot though, this was finally an opportunity to put those cheating accusations to rest. This entire chapter, mainly in Season 2, there were so many players convinced he was cheating. And to play devil's advocate, his last two performances at LAN were not very good. But this time, if he was finally able to change that, he'd prove everyone wrong once and for all. In the weeks leading up to LAN, everyone was claiming their POIs, and in Peterbot and Pollo fashion, they chose the best drop, which was the Raft, since it had the scan medallion. At first, it was looking like they'd be contested, but as the LAN got closer and closer, it was looking like they were able to scare off some of the best players in the world, claiming one half of the Raft completely for free, getting it uncontested. Before they knew it, the day was here to play on the big stage, and this championship was the last thing they needed to truly cement themselves as Fortnite legends. So with only one shot going up against the best players in the entire world, they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Loading into game 1, everyone was still unsure of where each team was dropping since nothing was set in stone. But luckily for Peter and Pollo, one of the duos contesting them ended up leaving, meaning they were officially uncontested, getting one of the most broken medallions we've ever seen completely for free. At first though, the tournament didn't start off so well, with them placing 7th and 15th during match 1 and 2. Now these weren't the worst games, but this is Peterbot and Pollo. Everyone had them as the top pick to win F and CS, so surely they'd do much better. Especially considering they had pretty much everything they needed, like I said, the medallion, a forecast tower, and a bunker. However, this is something that seems to happen in almost every single grand finals they play, meaning they just needed a little bit of a warm-up before they really got started.
Peterbot Pollo jumped down from the high ground. They're going to get in the mix. One of those goes to them. Merc Dash is down. Malibu is down. It's behind the last shot, and Pollo, hungrier than ever, going to get one.
Twitcher could actually take it, but Peterbot trying to shut that dream down. Peterbot,
oh my God,
is all he needs. He takes it all.
There's few, and there's still points to be earned here, and Pollo wants them all.
Recent refreshes, granted, everyone's building, everyone's burning through it, but Pollo strikes first.
Wall, Bolt has the angle. Can he get it? No! Peterbot won't drop it twice.
Bound to be marked any second here if he hasn't been already. Pollo not even gonna bother.
Need for Peterbot up top. He has done what he needed to, and Pollo takes down Angers and clutches out the win from the low ground with back-to-back.
Peterbot and Pollo would really show off why they are the best, ending off day 1 with back-to-back wins, meaning they were obviously in first place. This time with an almost 150 point lead on second, who was Thomas HD and Queasy. Now this sounds like a massive lead, but you need to remember, on day 2 there was a 1.5 times point multiplier, meaning it was possible for a bunch of teams to make a massive comeback. And to say day 2 was intense would be a massive understatement. Coming off of an insane day 1, everyone was thinking they'd continue popping off. However, this wasn't the case. In fact, it was much like the start of the day prior, but a lot worse, dying in 28th and 36th, essentially gaining no points. This was really bad for Peter and Pollo, especially considering Queasy and Thomas ended up winning game 1 and placing 6th in game 2. Because of this, Queasy and Thomas would take over the lead, now being just under 40 points ahead in first place. But again, this is Peterbot and Pollo, they were just getting started. Match 9, they would come back in a big way, winning the game off the back of a crazy solo clutch from Peterbot. However, the following match wouldn't end so well, going down in 17th. Either Peter and Pollo were going to make history, completing the near perfect chapter, or Queasy and Thomas were going to snatch that achievement away from them. We were now heading into the second to last game, which is one of the most important matches in a grands to see who will pull ahead and who will fall behind going into the final game. Throughout the entire game, each duo was playing pretty much perfect, but it was towards the very end where things would start to take a massive turn.
But Peterbot Pollo, they might just choose to take what's right in front of them. Rise immediately falls to Peterbot's accuracy, but it comes at a cost. Peterbot's lost Pollo. The lobby has closed in.
Going for a refresh, Pollo would go down right before the first moving zone, leaving Peterbot as a solo to keep the lead over a stacked Thomas HD and Queasy. So with everyone on the edge of their seats, we were about to see if Peterbot truly had what it took to be the best player in the world.
And we have seen Peterbot be here before. I mean, he just won a game where he clutched it up, so still alive. Thomas HD on the front side of the zone. Peterbot is just cooking, though.
Points, they've got 5 already, but Peterbot just continuing his massacre at this stage.
Backs him up and takes down Reet on the low ground there.
It happened. Thomas HD and Queasy sitting at 8 eliminations already, though. But Peterbot gets another ritual. It's Peterbot and Uda.
Oh my God.
Deal with, but Peterbot gets a huge chunk out of Queasy. Thomas is gonna fall. One more shot could do it.
Queasy versus Bulga up top. Takes him down. Queasy versus Peterbot now. How badly do you want it? Queasy is looking for the tag. Both shots can easily go any way. Peter finds the first one.
Peterbot would somehow pull off one of, if not the greatest solo clutch we've ever seen in Fortnite, coming down to that final 1v1 versus second place. But it wasn't over quite yet. Peter and Pollo were in first by just under 40 points, and with it being 100 points for just the win alone, anything was still possible. Each duo ended up making it off spawn without any problems, and Peter was able to pick up an elimination. At first, things seemed to be going well for each team, but soon one of them was going to run into a massive problem. This was the first time the entire weekend a zone pulled towards the west of the map where Peter and Pollo landed. Unfortunately for Queasy and Thomas, they land at the far southeast part of the map. Because of this, they were unable to get as much surge damage as they usually do, which was very unusual since they had always been above by a large margin. But as the game continued on, they would find themselves getting more and more desperate to get surge. It was getting sketchy. They kept going above, then below again, teetering on the edge of not only surge, but the FNCS Global Championship itself. It then got to the point where they had to make a play if they wanted a chance to stay in it, and nobody was ready for the outcome.
And he is missing every opportunity. The rotates. Thomas HD, Queasy have to go for a fight here, but no! They get caught and taken down!
Queasy and Thomas would end up going down, meaning there was no way Peter and Pollo could lose. But of course, they had to do a victory lap, winning the final game, officially crowning themselves as the 2024 FNCS Global Champions. I've already said this time and time again, but we have never seen this level of dominance from really any player throughout the entire history of Fortnite. In this chapter, they've truly cemented themselves as the best to ever do it. But their journey isn't over yet. With the announcement that 2025 will officially be trios, they have the opportunity to keep their FNCS win streak alive and continue to create history. But whatever does end up happening, nobody can deny that their reign over this entire chapter has been nothing short of legendary. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and check out one of these videos here. Have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.